Oh man, Connor, I'm not gonna lie, I'm so nervous right now. I really don't want to present. Oh no. Oh, she's gonna pick right now? Okay, class, the first group that's gonna present is Theron, Connor, and Josh Z's group on women's right movement. No. Okay, here we go. I'm nervous. Hello, I'm Theron McLunok.
And I'm kind of park.
My name is Joshua Zhao. This is our presentation on women's rights movement.
Historical context. Throughout the development of the American civilization, women were heavily subjected to sexism. Homes were seen as their special sphere, and wives were taught to immerse themselves in the Lord and to their husbands. Women didn't have many opportunities and generally seemed less than men. Women were seen as physically and emotionally weaker. Voting rights were not given to them, as well as men being legally allowed to beat their wives with a reasonable instrument. Women have no legal rights over her children, and divorces were near impossible to achieve. 10% of women ended up avoiding marriage altogether, and most women could not hold a political office. When marrying, women lost the rights to most of their property. This sets the stage for most of the development of the women's rights movement, as many women were unhappy with their roles in society and wanted to make change.
So here is some general information about the women's right movement. Any man over 21 could vote, even the unintelligent people, which angered women because during this time they were being admitted into colleges. And there was a women's right crusade, however, it was oppressed by a campaign which went against slavery. And female reformers were mostly white and gathered strength in numbers, and many were broad gauge battlers. They demanded rights for women and joined gender reform movements, where they then fought for temperance and the abolition of slavery. And many women turned to save the rest of society because evangelical preachers of the gospel of female spiritual worth were being praised in society, which then offered women an active role in bringing husbands and families back to God.
Who participated in this movement? The women, obviously. The women were the people who were protesting for their rights. They were constantly being oppressed and mistreated throughout the development of the Americas and refused to stop until they received change. However, prominent women in the movement were Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Margaret Fuller. Who was Susan B. Anthony? Susan B. Anthony was a militant lecturer for women's rights. She exposed herself furiously to those who opposed the women's rights and was an advocate of female rights that progressive women everywhere were called Susie B's.
Elizabeth Cady Stanton, a mother of 7 who insisted on leaving obey out of the marriage ceremony. This meant she did not vow to being obedient to her husband. She shocked feminists because she went through extreme lengths to advocate the suffrage for women. She also wrote the Declaration of Sentiments for the Seneca Falls Convention. Margaret Fuller, the first American female war correspondent. She wrote Women in the 19th Century, and it examined place of women in society. She suggested that there was an important relationship between the discovery of self, which was central to questioning gender roles.
So one of the key takeaways from the women's right movement is the Seneca Falls Convention, where many fighting feminists met at Seneca Falls, New York from July 19 to July 20th, 1848, where a memorable women's right convention was held. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, as mentioned earlier, read a Declaration of Sentiments, which is heavily influenced by the Declaration of Independence, where there are similarities between its structures. However, its most prominent quote is, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal." They also formally demanded a ballot for females, where they wanted voting rights. And this meeting was concluded by launching the modern women's rights movement. So here's a skit of Connor, Joshua, and I in a convention center recreating a key moment of the Seneca Falls Convention, where I will be reading the Declaration of Sentiments as Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Ladies, we meet here in Seneca Falls on July 19, 1848 to create history and an impact that shall last forever. I, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, will now commend the Declaration of Sentiments. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one portion of the family of man to assume among the people of the earth a position different from that which they have hitherto occupied,
but one to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes that impel them to such a course. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights governments are instituted, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of those who suffer from it to refuse allegiance to it, and to insist upon the institution of a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Such has been the patient sufferance of the women under this government, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to demand the equal station to which they are entitled. The history of mankind is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations on the part of man toward woman, having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over her. Now, in view of these entire disfranchisement of one half the people of this country, because women do feel themselves aggrieved, oppressed, and fraudulently deprived of their most sacred rights, we insist that they have immediate admission to all the rights and privileges which belong to them as citizens of the United States. Thank you.
Our works cited. Our two sources are American Pageant 16th edition by David M. Kennedy and Elizabeth Cohen and American History by Alan Brinkley. Our pictures are from wikipedia.com, britannica.com, and history.com.
Thank you for listening to our presentation.